So it's all good. But how's things, Chris? Good. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Obviously it's been a wee while to try and get this arranged, and I've never met you before, but I know you through Shawnee, who you play in the band with. Yeah. But don't have to have studied for this. It's all about yourself, and we're just going to talk about music. So how did you get into music? Cool. Your thoughts on different things, whether it be songwriting, whether it be recording. We'll talk about the Shermans as well, cool. And everything in between. But before we get started though, how are you actually doing?
Good. Alright, yeah, glad to be on, thank you very much. This is my very first podcast.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not an avid podcast listener, but
hopefully that this doesn't set the bar too high for all the other ones you do afterwards.
You never know. But I know, thanks very much for having us on.
Aye, it's going to be a good chat though. Just we'll just talk and we'll just see where it goes. But it's funny, somebody interviewed me last week, almost kind of like what I do, but they were interviewing me.
Right.
And it's funny because they actually said to me, like, what's your process for the podcast? Like, what do you research beforehand? Yeah. But it's funny though, because I actually said to them, I don't research too much, because the whole point is you come on here, we've never met, you tell me. I don't want to if I already wanted to know all this stuff, I could have looked it up or asked Shawnee or whatever and that. So I know a little tiny bit about yourself. I know a bit about the Shermans, I know a bit about Shawnee, but we'll see what happens. But where are you originally from?
So grew up in Bridgevallen, through in Stirling Way, and that's I suppose where it began, where I met Sean and the rest of the guys from the Shermans. I think you might have heard this story before, but we were all worked at a Summerfield.
I don't actually.
Oh, do you not?
No.
All right, okay. So let me take you right back then.
Right, okay.
So I got a job working for Summerfield. I think Dave or Baby Dave was working there. I don't think we crossed paths for too long. Sean was there, Kenny was there, and Graham Forsyth at the time was there.
Right.
And there was another guy and they were starting a band called the Shermans. And there was another guy who was playing guitar, and then I think a guy called Ross, I think he might have moved away, or it didn't work out.
So this is the only thing I know. You replaced somebody that went to Sweden. That's all Johnny told me.
Well, so that was the second stint.
Oh, right, okay.
So, that was a few years later, actually. So at the time, we had got asked if I wanted to go along to rehearsal studios down at Random Rhythms.
I remember that
at the time. The old toilets. It smelled like that as well. And it worked. It was all right. Loved what the guys were doing.
Yep.
And we took it from there. Had the first couple of gigs, I remember, in Stirling. In fact, I remember my very first gig, Broke a String, which was rather embarrassing.
Well, you know what? You're jumping way ahead, so I'm going to stop you there, right? So you brought up, right? See, going right back to the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
Were you into music when you were like really wee? Was that something you were exposed to by like your parents?
Yeah,
or something like
big time. I would say my mum not so much, but my dad was a big music fan.
So what kind of songs or bands was he listening to?
Everything. Honestly, he's a really eclectic music taste. A massive Roxy Music fan.
Right, same as my dad.
He thought himself as a bit of a new romantic, but loved Johnny Cash, Thin Lizzy.
Yep.
It
was all the bands he grew up on.
I would say so.
Yeah.
And like family business at the time was a scrapyard, so used to spend summer holidays in the lorry with him. And it was obviously cassette at the time, so they would only have to put 2 cassettes, so all day they would just get them on repeat. So
he didn't play an instrument though?
Doesn't play an instrument, is not musical at all. He loved his music.
And it's funny though, because I bet you, maybe not even then, but when you think back, the bands that he was exposing you to are classic bands.
And it's funny because if I then fast forward, I remember we went on before the birth of my first boy. Myself and Amanda, my wife, went on a bit of a baby moon, they call it, sort of pre-baby. Right, she was pregnant, went to Portugal, and I hired this apartment, and there was nothing much there other than a pool, and I went through Roxy Music's back catalogue the whole time I was there, and had an absolute love for them, still do now, but didn't appreciate it until that point. So I'm actually, late 20s, probably would have been.
It's almost like you can't come full circle, you come back round
big time. And it not only obviously brought back some memories, but at the same time, I had just an absolute love for them. And then I was chatting to my dad about it. He was like, "Oh, they were amazing. They were punk before punk and all that sort of stuff."
They were the originals before other people then started copying the sound and doing their own version of it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think actually now even them, I think they stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And then from that I grew into listening to lots of Brian Ferry as well. And it's just brilliant.
It's funny you saying Portugal, right? Because I don't know if you can see it through there, right? There's a bar, right? So I went to Portugal. First time I would have been maybe 16 or 17, like a long time ago, right? And flew into Faro.
Yep.
And this was a family holiday, and we'd got a villa. It was this place was like maybe a 25-minute, 30-minute car journey from Faro.
Sure.
Not that far. And wee town just in the middle of nowhere, and got to the villa and spend all day hanging about the pool and all that sort of stuff. And then it's like, right, well, it's a wee village, a wee town, let's walk up to and see what's there. There'll be like a restaurant or something. Walked up this hill and it gets to a T-junction, and the same 5 local guys are sleeping under this tree on this bench every day sort of thing. And it's like, well, it's left or right, well, let's go right, we'll see what's that there. Go along, there's a wee shop and there's like one restaurant, and it's like a retired guy from London, a bit of Jack the Lad kind of guy, and right, we'll go in here, and how did you get here? Talking to him, and he's like, oh, there's this other bar, if you were to have went left, there's this other bar, don't go to that. And so obviously the next night, well, let's go left and see this other bar. Turns out it was this bar here, right, in Portugal, and it was owned by the bass player from Iron Maiden.
Right.
I hadn't even heard of it. And what happened was they toured in the 80s, and his pal, who was a roadie, was retiring, and I think he was originally from Portugal, and he'd said to him, listen, I've got all this like memorabilia from like touring, and I think he had a villa not far from there, and he says, listen, I'm going to set up a pub, do you fancy running it? He's like, oh yeah, it's fine, I think his apartment was above it and that.
Nice.
And this was like the most famous rock pub ever. Like every band that went through Portugal swung by this pub, and then you went into it and it was just like, it was like a shithole, but it was priceless. Like every single bit of the wall was taken up with pictures of him, with every famous person and things all signed, and basses that he'd used on tour, and all the flags that people throw on stage, and you're just like, there you go, another story from Portugal. I don't know what it is about Portugal, but
it's and you wonder as well why the other boy didn't want you to go. Wonder what he'd done.
But I think it was just because he wasn't wanting to lose business, because other than that there was nothing in the place, right? But so your dad, so similar to my dad, exposing you to some outstanding bands, but it happens to everybody. What age then were you when you discovered your own musical taste?
I remember.
And do you actually remember, was there a specific band or moment?
So the Manic Street Preachers.
Right.
So I remember I had some birthday money, it might have been, and going to Virgin. And
back when there was music shops.
This Is My Truth, Now Tell Me Yours came out, and buying that.
What year was that?
Past 1990.
Was it mid-90s?
8 maybe.
Right, okay.
I honestly don't know. I can't remember. But I remember buying that and just listening to it on repeat. It was a CD.
But what made you go and buy it? Had you heard that somewhere else?
So they had a couple of singles out from that album, and it was brilliant. And I, at the time, had or was that at the same time? Maybe just after. I had also been given 2 singles, and I actually think it was Oasis singles, but they weren't actually Oasis singles. Right. I think it was No Oasis singles that came out, and they got them wrong. But anyway, and it was Supersonic and Cigarettes and Alcohol were the two singles that I got as a birthday present. And I'm not saying they just didn't interest me, but I just didn't connect with them at the time. All my friends were getting into Oasis at the time, and it just didn't connect. So I remember buying the Mannix album, listening to it on repeat. Now at that time as well, or about that time, my brother was getting really into his music. Now, some of his taste is absolutely terrible, but some of it really resonated with me, and it was at the same time that Ocean Colour Scene were playing Stirling Castle, so I remember him going up to that. I remember Cousins, again, as I said, we had a scrapyard. We used to do the skips for Tina Park when it was at Strathclyde Country Park.
Enormous back then. Yeah,
way back. And again, cousins that were all working in the yard because they used to hand in tickets, so they would all be going. So I would definitely hear, and there would be a buzz around what was going on, and you just thought, I really wanted to get into this. But it was really weird as well, because I had another cousin who was mad into his dance music. Now this would have been when the Foo Bar was absolutely flying, and he had decks in his bedroom, and I thought, this is the most wonderful thing. This is absolutely brilliant. And he couldn't play them or anything like that, but he would just play records, and this like brilliant sound system, and you totally
got headphones on, just thinking you're playing the partners.
It was absolutely great, and he'd give me a shot of it. So I did. There was maybe when I was a bit younger, I thought I'd go do the dance music route, but anyway, it never came.
So was bands like the Mannix and Ocean Colour Scene, was that what made you want to pick up the guitar?
I wouldn't have said so, actually, because that one was a bit odd. So I started learning guitar at primary school, wanted to do it. But
what made you want to pick up the guitar then?
Just fancied it, wanted to do something. I wanted to pick up the saxophone originally, and then
I was going to say, why the guitar? Why not the bass guitar or the drums? But was it simply just the guitar was there?
And lessons were available. I said at primary school, and for about 6 weeks, all I learnt was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I thought it was absolutely pish. So this guitar sat in my room for years and years, and I was at high school.
So did your folks just get you?
Yeah, got it as a Christmas present. And it sat for ages, and then my older brother decided he was wanting to learn. Now he was sort of 6th year at high school, and my mum and dad, or my mum knew of this guitar teacher, a guy called Jim Chadwin. From Stirling, played with a few bands, but like covers band. I did some original stuff with the Jack Daniels Experience. Brilliant guitarist, really great guy. And the story with him actually was he was quite a high flyer in the banking industry at the time, but gave it all up, hated it supposedly, and just wanted
his passion was music,
just play guitar and teach guitar. So my brother was going to his guitar lessons. I got offered, do you want to go along as well? And it was the most great thing about that was Jim wouldn't teach you the songs that you didn't want to learn. He would ask you to come along with a song that you wanted to learn, and he would teach you the theory behind it at the same time.
See, I was similar to yourself. Wanted a guitar, got one for Christmas. But the compromise was that I had to go for lessons because it was an expensive gift. And there was a guy in Falkirk that he'd done group classes, like 4 or 5 people in a group. It used to be Woodlands High School, it's not there anymore, and it was, I don't know what it was, but it was like book 1, stage 1, and he was obviously kind of teaching you, and it was things like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and it just bored the hell out of me. But I also wanted to keep learning it, to learn more and stuff, but I had to learn that myself. I would love it if he'd said, you've got to learn this. However, give me a song that you would really like, and maybe do the two at the same time, because it would keep you interested. And the difficulty, like, not to call it your age here, but this is like pre-YouTube, so like self learning was a lot more difficult. It's funny though, 'cause I've spoke to various people. Do you know Barry Frame? I know who you're talking about. I was talking to him because I was saying he's a few years younger than me, but I got a guitar. It would have been maybe 92, 93, something like that, about 10, 11, and no YouTube, and it was hard to find sheet music. Like there would be music shops, and you'd go in, but you had. For me, I had to have tab because I didn't know how to read music, and I wasn't interested in reading music. I just wanted someone to tell me where to put my fingers so I could learn it. And back then, I was too young see the concept of learning by ear.
Right.
I wasn't good enough to figure that part out yet. And but I was talking to Barry, and this was a great story. Remember Music City in Falkirk, the Cowwind?
Oh yeah, I know, yeah.
He says that like when you went in there, all the instruments were down the bottom, and then you went up the stairs, and there was all the pianos and the sheet music. Yep. He says that he went up one time, and I don't know if it was Oasis or Ocean Colour, but he's found this book with tab, and he goes to the guy, "You got an A4 sheet of paper? Aye, what do you want that for?" He's like, "Oh, there's this solo I've been trying to figure out. I'm going to just copy the book." "No, you can't copy the book." But I was like, kids nowadays, it's so. If you wanted to learn the guitar, I can't believe how easy it must be, in the sense that it's just at your fingertips. You go on your phone and you've got a million lessons for the same song.
Still.
But at the same time, it's not a shortcut. You've still got to put the hours in, or you're never going to learn it. I think some people think it's a shortcut. You know, you've got all these lessons available at your fingertips, but you still need to sit and learn it, or you'll just never learn. I think some people, they've not got the patience to sit. I tried to get my daughter to do the guitar. She fancied trying it, and it's like 15 minutes, and she was like,
"You've got to want to do it.
I can't do it."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "But you've got to want to practice every day, and you could practice every day for 5 years, still be rubbish. You could be like me and practice for 30 years and still be rubbish." But I was like, that's the point, you've got to put the time in. But it must be great if you're like 12 years old now, and you say to your mum, "Dad, I think I want to learn the guitar." It must be amazing if you've got that passion you want to learn, and you've just got all that stuff accessible now.
And I totally agree, and that's why I think that, I'm not saying Jim's approach was revolutionary. I'm sure there was lots of other people doing something similar, but that was the big difference between, you know, big group lessons through school or other, whereas it was just the two of you basically in his flat, him saying, like, give me a song, I'll teach you it, but I'll teach you the theory as you go through. So I remember the first song we learnt was Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie. Like, absolutely love that song to this day, because for mainly that reason. And it was relatively simple to play, but then you got into like power chords and everyone else that sat over the top of it.
It wouldn't have, I'll guarantee it didn't happen when you were learning Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or whatever it was, but when you're able to play something, now it probably sounded crap, right? But when you play something, you recognise that that's the song that I like listening to. It totally inspires you to, like, alright, I want to pick this up, and what else can I learn?
And exactly that. So every week, so we had lessons, every 2 or 3 weeks, and it'd be a new song, and Jim would give you the stuff to take away, and he would write it all down. So again, it wasn't sheet music, it was tab and chord, and it just went from there on, and actually opened us up, I think, because myself and my brother's music tastes were slightly different, to some degree anyway, but opened us up, or opened me up, to like loads of different music. I remember like learning a lot of Neil Young stuff with Jim, and it was acoustic, but also learning like predominantly electric rock songs on the acoustic guitar. It's hard. Like, it's quite difficult to make it sound good, but actually just, you know, move your hand in the right way. If
you can get it to sound good on an acoustic,
exactly, and that was his theory.
You'll always get it to sound good when you've got the guitar plugged into the amp, and you've got a fancy effects pedal and all that sort of stuff. If you can get it sounding still made decent on an acoustic, then it'll always transfer over. If you're relying too much, I've seen people relying on a fancy amp or a pedal to hide their inabilities,
right?
And I was like, you've still got to learn it.
So and it took off from there. So and I continued it on. So my brother stopped, he moved away, went to uni and stuff. I continued getting lessons off Jim, and then it kind of dwindled away over time. But in fact, that first guitar, I had a scooter at the time,
right? And
I remember going down for a lesson. I was 16, lesson with Jim. I had the guitar on the back, and he said to me, "Oh, would you mind, when the lesson finished, he said, would you mind dropping this DVD off it, Blockbuster?" He said, "No problem, I'll pass it anyway." So I commit his on the scooter, guitar in the back. It was quite icy, goes round the corner, slipped, came off, guitar totally knackered. Right, so I thought, crap, how am I going to explain this one? Still living at home.
Yeah.
Not got a job, or not got a proper job anyway. Bike's all scuffed up the side. I was like, fuck. So goes up. Anyway, the bike's okay. Goes up, drops the DVD off, comes back round, comes past the same corner. Car pulls it in front of me, rattled into the side of it. The police were coming out, the Chinese across the road, so they seen it all. They're like, hope you're okay, that's fine. Brand new scooter on the insurance, didn't cost me a thing. Guitar was obviously claimed as well. I'm just like, Christ, that happened. It came up on insurance.
So you're learning the guitar same way that we all learnt back then. It's slow going, but if you stick at it, you get there. And then obviously you start learning from other people. See if you start jamming with other folk and all that. But who would you say were your guitar influences like back then? Who were you kind of like, what can you be like them or sound like them?
So it definitely still is, and like Shawnee and the rest of the boys will laugh at this. So I'm a massive Ocean Colour Scene fan. Right. Have been a massive admirer of Stevie Craddock. So he's absolutely like my guitar hero. Is Stevie Craddock. And then actually following him got me then into like Weller, and then into the Specials as well, because he played with the Specials for quite a bit.
Because it's sometimes cool if there's somebody you really like, and then you discover all the stuff all the people that inspired them. You can sometimes actually then see, understand now why they played it that way, because that sounds a bit like that, and that joined together.
And when you go back through even like when you take Steve Craddock for example, like he's massively influenced by like Small Faces. So actually a big Small Faces fan. And then and it's funny because that's when as I sort of left, I was still at school a little bit, or towards the end of being at school, started at Summerfield, and that's when met Shawnee and the rest of the guys, and then discovered he was into all the same stuff as well. So give us a wee laugh, and you might embarrass yourself in front of your bandmates and whoever else is watching this, but do you remember well, I think you've already said this, the first album that you ever bought was Manic Street Preachers. What was the first professional gig you ever attended? What was the first gig? I think it was Tea in the Park.
Right.
I was 15.
A festival then? Festival,
and the very first artist I went and seen, again, influenced from my brother, was Badly Drawn Boy.
Right, okay.
And he played a tiny stage. Like, I'm talking
like a wee side stage,
1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe not even 1 o'clock, and there must have been 40 folk there. Like hardly anybody, and he was alright. I'm not a massive Badly Drawn Boy fan, but it was one of the early on in the day, it was one of the
it's that thing as well, like I've spoke about this before, is like it doesn't matter how good a sound system you've got or your headphones or that, there's nothing like standing in a venue and when the band's playing, you can feel it in your chest. And then obviously you've got the atmosphere. If you've got like 40 people or 40,000 people all singing along to the same song, it's remarkable. It's pretty cool. Like,
and from there, as I said, it was the first gig, proper gig I went to, probably 15 at Tea in the Park, camping all weekend. Again, told my mum and dad it was fine, and it was brilliant. Just like what a coming of age that was, and then was at gigs almost every weekend after that. But again, I was following the same kind of bands, so Ocean Colour Scene, Embrace. So
see, before like you start working, you bump into Shawnee and all the guys. Were you in any bands prior to that?
Nah, not really. One of my best mates, he played guitar, so we used to, house parties, etc. Used to jam with him. Actually, he's played in
but was it cover songs? It wasn't like originals or anything?
That's exactly it. And so it was just cover stuff. But I was always impressed by what Mark was doing, because he was self-taught. And he was playing, the same stuff as me. And again, this was like before YouTube or anything like that. But so that was great.
It's amazing as well if you're playing with someone. They don't technically need to be great. See if they've got a bit of confidence about them. It just inspires you. Especially like if they're maybe singing as well or something.
And it was just house parties at the time.
So
it's like.
So you then start working.
And
I don't know if you have the pleasure or if that's the right word to use, but you bump into Shawnee and all the other guys.
Yeah.
So had they already started the band?
Yeah, kind of, and I don't think they played a gig. In fact, no, they definitely hadn't, but they'd started rehearsing.
When is this roughly? Like what year?
2000, end of 2006,
right,
maybe
okay.
into 2007. I left school at maybe it started 2006.
Right.
And as I said, we had 5 songs. And I remember going up to Shawnee's flat as well, and him teaching me like
so
what the songs were.
Did you just start working, and was it just simply through conversation? I play the guitar.
Yeah, a little
You're
bit
looking
of
for a guitarist.
Yeah, but at the time, it was a really, like not a massive shop, so we were nights out all the time and all that sort of stuff. So we were
same
socialising.
interest, you like the same bands, and it just kind of goes from there. So I know Shawnee's the main songwriter.
Sure.
So you reckon maybe 4 or 5 kind of originals already in the works when you appeared?
And I was totally hooked in the songs and the setup and what they were looking at.
It's inspiring as well. Like if you've never been in a band before, and all of a sudden there's 3-4 guys that you get on with anyway. You all like the same music, and now you're in a band set up with them.
Yeah.
It inspires you because it's exciting. It's fun.
It was great. I said I remember that first. It was Dr. Gorman's was the name of the bar. I don't know what it is now. Maybe it's an Indian or something like that in the Craigs.
Right.
And first gig we had, and I just thought it was again like the most wonderful.
So this was
thing.
your first gig, but also the band's first gig.
As a band's first gig. Obviously, Shawnee had been playing in bands beforehand, things like that. But I think it was everybody else's first gig as well.
So how good or bad was it?
I would say it was alright, considering again it could have gone horribly wrong, but we practiced.
Yeah.
Again, we were time rich at the time. It's different now, which we'll get on to, but at the time it was no problem. You could go down to Random Rhythms every Sunday night generally was when we went down, or maybe a Monday night, and I played this first gig, loved it. I can't remember who was on the bill at the time.
So there
was another 3 bands. I don't know
right.
if I'd be lying honestly if I told you I'd be lying. And thought it was great, and it just went from there on. And again, Shawnee's always been like 90% songwriter, but his approach I think works really well, and everybody's bought into it. We'll work on sort of 3 or 4 songs at a time, and then you start to build up a bit more of a set list, and you're starting to be able to drop songs because you've only got a short period of time.
I like Shawnee's approach. The way he kind of put it was that he would, and it's similar to a lot of bands who have like a main songwriter.
Sure.
He would come to the band with the skeleton of a song. Right. Here's the verse, chorus, blah blah blah. But he's maybe got a vision in his head that this is where I see the song going. But he also trusts his other bandmates. All you guys adding your parts is going to make this song better. Yeah. And and you try things. I like what you're doing there. I didn't really like that too much, but it's great when you collaborate with someone else, because Shawnee comes to you with a basic song. Now, I know he doesn't play lead guitar, but if Shawnee was to come up with a lead guitar part, it might be completely different to what you would view that fits there. That's why it's interesting, because it can go in a totally different direction. When Shawnee presents this song and you listen to it, digest it, and you go, I think this is going to add to it and make it sound better. And what I'd said to him, because the funny thing is, I'm trying to think when I met Shawnee, like the Shermans weren't on the go.
Right, okay.
I'd never heard of the Shermans, right? So, like, I know obviously they had some success in the sort of late 2000s.
Sure.
But I think I met Shawnee, I was playing gigs in the pub.
Right.
And Shawnee was coming along every week, and that's how I got to know him, like through a friend of a friend.
Right.
And but I think that would have been maybe around 2010. Right. Something like that. Yeah. And I've known him obviously ever since. But it's just, it wasn't until someone had said, oh, he used to play in a band. They were actually they got a bit of success, they were quite good, and I kind of like looked up and I was like, Christ, I never realised that, because I was just used to seeing Shawnee steaming, getting up and like singing some cover songs and like having a great time. But it was cool though, because what he also said to us, and he didn't mean it in like a bad way, but he'd said, you know, the guys in the band, they all play their instrument. Nobody would say they were an expert. Sure. As most people who turns up, but that works in your favour, because I think that makes it more interesting with the ideas that you come up with. And I can remember I was always playing in bands where there was two guitarists. Yeah. Right. And then back in 2007, 2008, all of a sudden my pal, listen, we've got a band, the guitarist had just quit, any chance you could kind of cover for us? Ended up playing with them for about a year, but I was only guitarist in the band, so it was guitar, bass and drums and then a vocalist. Right. So everything I played was completely different to what I would have played had there been a second guitarist. Sure. Yeah. And that's what Shawnee had said, that what the guys lack in ability, they make up for in the way they approach the song. And I actually said that to him. What I really liked about the songs was, it's not for everybody, but I love songs that breathe. So when you guys are playing, there'll be a bit where a chord gets hit and you don't need to play 100 notes just to show off the fact that you're a lead guitarist. Sure. What you play makes the song better. It doesn't put the spotlight on you and go, look at me everybody, I'm the lead guitarist. I like that approach. And it depends what kind of music you're playing. If you're a Van Halen band, you're going to want somebody that's shredding on the guitar. But when I seen you guys play last year, because you got back together, and we'll talk about that, you got back together, that's the first time I'd pretty much heard most of your songs. Right. And it was great. I mean, obviously it was a good atmosphere, McHugh's and Bannockburn, it was a good wee venue, but the actual songs themselves, I just liked the sound of them. It sounded fresh. It didn't sound like yous were copying somebody else. Yous had your own sound, and that didn't happen straight away. That would have developed itself over the years.
I think so.
But also, it's every individual that contributes to make that sound. I know it starts with Shawnee.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and there's lots of contributing factors to this. I would wholeheartedly agree. Like, none of us are experts in our field. Like, none of us. Again, Shawnee might disagree with this one. Still claims he's the best harmonica player in the stuff. But like, none of us are experts in our field. Love playing in a band, and have got like a great absolutely love doing that. But at the time, you know, I call it like the first stint, which was when or phase one or part one, when I was in the band, because I left for a few years, and that's when Nick came on board. You had Forsyth, who was playing lead guitar, but he was a classical guitar player. Right, okay. Like, and he was classically trained, so he could read music. All right. I think he was a piano player, really. So like, he wasn't a traditional indie rock type guitarist.
He's approaching it completely different from the other 15 bands that are on the board.
Exactly that, and even the way he played and what he heard in a song, and he came up with these brilliant riffs, like really, I wouldn't quite say iconic, but they're like extremely memorable, and that's what led ultimately to a lot of success. Was that, but again, you would never have pitched him as an indie rock pop,
but it worked in your favour.
But it absolutely worked, and I totally agree about like letting the songs breathe. It's funny, like we were having this conversation a few months ago. We've been back in the studio writing, and I think there's a maturity now in our approach to this, which wasn't necessarily there, or weren't conscious of it back in the day, when I'm talking back in the day, like early 2000s-ish, when other bands had approached, and it was just guitarists competing against each other. Everybody had to be busy doing something. And it just becomes this wall of noise.
It's like everyone's battling each other rather than working together for the greater good.
Like 100%. And that's what I think made us slightly different to some other bands that were out there. I'm not saying it was right, wrong or indifferent, but it just made it slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard yous last year, I mean, I could sit and listen and go, I can see they're inspired by blah 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 blah.
Sure. Yeah.
But you still had your own unique sound, which was refreshing to hear, because there's loads of great bands out there, but they don't always have something. A lot of the time it sounds like a rehash of something that's already been done before and probably better.
Yeah.
And that, so it was quite refreshing to see it. And I'm assuming, from what Shawnee had told me, initially it was just a one-off gig. Just, it was quite fun just getting back into it. And I'm assuming that because the gig went that successful, everyone enjoyed it, everyone maybe in their lives were in a place where they could commit to doing the band again. Is that kind of why the band sort of, he's decided, let's continue and see what
let's
we
get
come up
back
with?
into it. So I don't know if it was that or not. It's been a bit of a journey over the last sort of year or so, and I think again there's an air of maturity around what we're doing. We're all, and it's so difficult, and again I'll go back to the phrase, like way back when we were, time rich, cash poor. I remember we bought our first PA, and it cost us, I think, again about 700 quid for a second hand shop. And it took us ages to even scramble enough to get that just playing gigs,
putting wee bits in, and
that's it. But now we've got a studio that we're our own place, we're paying monthly for. Everybody's really comfortable with that.
Just can't find the bloody time.
But you can't get the time, honestly.
But that's the thing, everyone's working, family. You've got to take the band isn't the number one priority.
But what we really value is that Monday night we've kind of ring fenced for us to all kind of get together when possible, and everybody really values
what
it.
You find is, I bet you're probably more productive now than before.
100%.
Because right, we've only got this 3 hours on Monday here. Whereas before you could be like, right, we'll meet up a couple of times and we'll do this, the next thing.
It isn't. It is in that, again, we're more productive because actually we just value the time that we're in the studio and not at work, and it's a bit of an escape, right? But we're not as productive, I don't think, because we're time pressured in that sense, because we've got our own place. Like I can say to Shawnee, or he'll say I'm going down on Wednesday night, fancy coming down. Me and him will jam out a few songs. Last night we were down and it was Kenny who plays bass, myself and Dave on drums. So there's nobody singing, but it's just getting out of the house, having a bit of laugh,
practice,
and practicing that way. We've paid for the space anyway, so we'll use it. I'll go down. I've started to take the kids down because they love just better tell Dave this, but they love a knock about his drums and to see the amp and just experience it.
Is he like the guy from Step Brothers?
A little bit.
Look at his stick. Who's touched my stick?
So things like that, it's the setup now is brilliant. Again, we really value it, but even getting the studio set up, like I didn't have an amp, so I had to go and I bought a second hand amp for 80 quid. It's perfect. I'm having to replace fans in it that I can no longer get. That's all another story. Nick bought a second hand amp. Kenny bought a second hand amp. So our whole back line is like under 200 quid. But it's perfect for us.
But it's that thing as well. I've seen this as well. I think some people think the more money spent is going to make them better.
And that might be the case, but it's certainly not for us.
I don't agree with that. I'm like, you're either going to be good or not, and it depends on the time that you put into it. It's not. It doesn't depend on how expensive your guitar or your amp is. You see some like these professional people, and they're still using like the crappy guitar that they bought when they were 15-year-old, and they're in their like 50s now. They're still using it. And again, totally agree. But everything's moved on as well. So like I used to have a multi-effects pedal. I had a couple of them. Over the years, but I've now gone to like individual pedals, but I'm buying like cheap ones from Amazon or Temu or something like that. Just link them all up,
and they're fine. They're all, for what we need them, they're all right. So I'm spending like, the last one I bought was 14 quid compared to.
What is your setup for any guitarists watching? So what is your preferred setup?
As in
like what are you
pedals?
using? Like when I'm playing, I still like my guitar to sound like a guitar.
Sure.
So I like to have there'll maybe be times where I usually have a bit of reverb.
Right.
There'll maybe be a time where I'll have a wee bit of chorus.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm not adding much else to it. If I'm doing the rock stuff, I'll maybe have like a good distortion or something like that. But maybe an overdrive, but it still sounds like a guitar. I sometimes see guitar like it's like the pedal board is enormous, keyboard. And it gets to the point it doesn't sound like a guitar, and I'm like, what's the point in playing it? Like, what is your setup?
So I've got like a cheap wah pedal. It's alright, it's fine, does a job. I've got a sustain, 2 overdrives. I recently bought a reverb. Again, it's alright. It's not brilliant. Don't use it all that much. A chorus and a delay. So
it sounds, I mean, that's pretty basic for a guitarist.
Yeah, I would say so. And then,
but that's all you need for what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly that. And just go through a clean channel through the amp, so no messing about on the amp either. And again, like even Nick, he's got access to some pedals, but he doesn't use them because he's quite happy to use like 1 or 2 settings on his amp, and that's it.
Aye, they're there if you want to try something, or if you maybe need them. But sometimes I think, see if you can get a nice clean sound from your amp, and if you need a distorted sound, you've got like a channel 2. Sometimes I kind of think that's all you need. Sometimes, but again, it depends what type of music you're playing.
I totally understand it, and I think, but certainly for us, it's that simplicity, and like we don't overcomplicate anything. Don't overcomplicate structure. There's a song that we're working on at the moment which is slightly complicated, but it's complex for us. Not necessarily other bands. There's, we talk about key changes and stuff. But yeah, our setup is as basic as it comes. Yeah. And I think that's what works for us.
Yeah, because I'm a guitarist as well, and probably similar to yourself. I always think there's always 2 types of guitarists. There's the ones that are technically gifted.
Sure.
They know all the scales. Yeah. They can do fancy stuff if that's what's required. And I'm not. And I can do a couple of wee fancy things, but I would never ever do it. But I'm not the type of person that's going to sit for hours and hours and hours learning to do all the Van Halen stuff. That's just not me. The other type of guitarist is the one that it's got to be about feel. Yeah. And that's kind of the way I approach it. And you could argue and say that's because you've not got the ability to do that. But me personally, I like listening to stuff. I like the way it sounds, the way it feels, the way it fits the song. And it depends what style it is. Yeah. But I kind of saw yourself, like when you were playing last year in the band, I just liked the sound because it was familiar, but it was also unique.
Right.
So familiar as in I can see all your influences, and obviously Shawnee sends me here's a song idea I've been working on, what do you think about this, and kind of go back and forth sort of thing. But it was cool. Did you like that gig?
I love playing live. Absolutely love playing live.
I know that you hadn't played for a while. How was the nerves before
it? Personally?
Yeah.
I'm alright, not too bad.
Are you okay as in... there's nothing wrong with nerves.
Sure.
I think it's pretty normal.
Yeah, everybody gets them.
It's pretty normal. I think there's something wrong with you if you don't have them, but it's how you manage them.
Yeah.
And I can still be like that, as in feel a bit of nerves, but I know that once I get out there and hit the first chord, I know that I'm capable of doing what I'm there to do.
Yeah, and I would totally echo that from my perspective. I can't speak on behalf of the other guys. I get more nervous because we're putting on our own gigs.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me nervous. Are people going to turn up? Is something going to go wrong?
I would probably...
So you've got all that stuff on top of it.
Nowadays, I think nerve-wise, I would probably be more nervous, not about I know that I'm capable of playing a good gig. I get more nervous about what happens if something goes wrong with the PA or something breaks on the guitar or that's but that's probably normal. I would imagine most people think like that, and you just deal with it when it happens, when it comes along.
So us playing live is like, we do love it. but it's become a necessity for us, and that's simply because we love, like, again, I love being in the studio, love recording, and that's, I think, where we want to get to. So we'll play the odd gig, get enough to then go back in and record, and just keep going round in that circle. Hence the reason that we were in at sort of tail end of summer there for a couple of days in the studio, and then able to release.
Are you working to, is it an album or an EP, or are you just recording the songs as they come?
Yeah, we've not really spoken much about an album. From my perspective, I wouldn't mind doing it. It's not the be all and end all. I think, again, it's different nowadays compared to way back when.
Because I suppose the argument would be is, do you need to do an album? You know,
I don't see the benefit,
is it nowadays? I'm of the generation, I still love the idea of an album.
Sure.
The package, the artwork, the track list.
Right.
But that's my generation. But most people, I think, would probably argue nowadays that you're probably better either doing an EP,
sure, because
you can get 3 or 4 songs done, or you do a song and you release it, and you can do one every couple of months to keep people interested.
And that's the approach we're taking at the moment. Yeah. Exactly that.
What's your approach for recording? How do you use, as a band, like to record? Do you use record live, or do you layer it all? Do you start with the drums?
So live as much as possible.
All right, okay.
And it's, again, we're just used to playing live. We're used to being in the practice room.
So when you're saying live, are you recording like the basic song live and doing overdubs afterwards?
Correct. Yeah, exactly that. So what we did when we were in Waterfront in Falkirk or Camelin a few months back was we recorded drums and bass with everyone, but obviously bass is isolated and the drums are isolated, and then we went back and overdubbed guitars, backing vocals, anything else that we wanted to add on, and that works all right. So you put the basic track down to help.
And is your drummer playing to a click, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's funny, again, last night we were working out.
So you're getting a really solid foundation for everybody to then add their parts onto it.
Yeah, so last night it was myself, Dave and Kenny. Dave's saying, well, we should actually practice with a click before we go into the studio, because
don't want to waste your time. You want it sorted.
If you've done it yourself, but there's that natural kind of feel of a song, and you can see each other, and you're like, okay, we're going to this bit now, and then it's the
sometimes it's when the recording light comes on, all of a sudden
everybody freezes.
I've played this a million times. Why am I making mistakes now?
And then you start hearing the click, and then you start hearing the sound engineer saying, right guys, what's going on? So he said we should maybe just, before we go in a couple of weeks before, just try and practice with the click, and everybody keep on it.
Yep.
Which is great in one sense, but I get, does it take away from just the natural feel? I'm not too sure.
Depends on, I think it depends on the type of music that you're playing. There's some music 100% needs a click. There's others that's just like, it doesn't need it. It would lose something. And then I sometimes think you try to get, I like kind of doing your approach, it's almost in between. I like it, the technology is here that you can get a really good solid foundation, but going back and overdubbing your guitars on top then kind of frees it up a wee bit, that it's not completely like 100%, but it lets the song sound a little bit more fresh.
The other thing that we found as well, going again, because it's been so long since we recorded anything, going back into the studio, it's just so easy now. So even like Andrew, who was recording us, was just like, oh, that's fine, that wee bit's out, I'll just nudge it. And so you weren't having to go back and record or just cut that.
It's funny when I record, I know what you're saying, I'm not a personally, I'm not a fan of copy and paste. So I still like to play a song from start to finish on the guitar, and so if you muck one bit up, right, delete that, go back to the start. But I also like the drums and the bass like being pretty much perfect, and then everything else gets added on. I think it just depends on the band, but I like to try and find that in between, not too perfect but not so free that it's kind of, it's 5 times faster at the end than it was at the beginning when you started.
Totally. And we absolutely, it's been great on that journey. So going in back into the studio, recording, having our own rehearsal space. But what we've really struggled with, not massively, but it's just trying to navigate, like social media and what happens. Again, it was different way back when we had like Calling It Wrong and then Venom out. whereby it was, I think, went through platform records on both, and you got to see the charts, and it was in the papers and all that sort of stuff. Now it's just mad. It's insane to try and keep up, like with the pre-saves that you need to be doing, and how all the algorithms work.
It's a strange one, because it's absolutely amazing in some ways, having the internet and social media being what it is now compared to back then. You could discover bands from all over the world that you would never have came across when we were teenagers. But then the other argument would be that there's so much stuff out there. How do you make yourself stand out from the thousands of others?
Correct. And it's like something like, again, don't quote me on the figure, but like 20-odd thousand new tracks released on Spotify every day. It's mad. Because
I'd ask someone as well, is artwork still important? Because similar to yourself, when we were younger, you'd go into the music shop when they still existed, and there has been times when I've went in and bought an album and I've never heard any of the songs. This is a cool album cover, and okay, you're hoping when you get home you put this thing on that it's going to be worth the money that you've spent on it. And then I like to then ask people, do you think it's still important? To me, it's still important. I still think it's really important. It's part of the, whether it be an album, whether it be an EP, whether it be a single, it's part of it. I've spoke to some people, and some people say, it is really important. Some people, it's almost like an afterthought. What about for yourself?
For like personally, again, I think it is relatively important.
The great thing, I mean, there's no right or wrong.
And I get this. It's funny, like, we're not artistic when it comes to that sort of stuff, and we really struggled for like Silhouette single cover. Like, what did we do? And between us, we couldn't agree on it. I thought something was great, Kenny perhaps didn't, and then.
So what did you go to an outside party to make the decision?
We thought about it, and we ended up settling on Dave created something. I think he might have used AI, but he created something that I think we were deliberating, and thinking we need to get something out here. We're going to have to just make a decision, and I reached the point where I wasn't that bothered. As far as, like, I was comfortable with the song. It
was almost like I'm happy with the music.
I'm okay with that.
Decide on the other part.
I would prefer something else. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable, and I think that's where we kind of settled on. But it's crazy. There's a good documentary which I watched not so long ago called Square in the Circle, and it's about two guys. I can't remember their names, but they were in tow with Pink Floyd at the time. They're like pals with Pink Floyd, and they became. One of them was a photographer, and this was like way back, obviously 60s, 70s. And it was like graphic design before it was digitised.
I think they were all from kind of art school, weren't they?
That, apart from one of the guys who just, he was a bit of an orphan and was just there abouts. But anyway, they formed this company doing artwork. And one of the guys who's interviewed in it is Noel Gallagher. And his take on it was, he was telling his kids what he was doing that day, and they were like, what does that mean? He was like, well, you know that tiny little square on your phone? That cost me $100,000. You know, it's just, it's insane to think the amount of money you're paying for this stuff, but is it important nowadays? I don't know. If you're not getting a physical copy, it's...
I mean, I suppose there's the whole... If you're selling t-shirts, for example, you want a good logo or something. I don't know. I mean, I think it's important, but that's because I was brought up in a time when the artwork could sell the album, having never heard it before. If you're on Spotify flicking through, maybe you want something that, I mean, you want something that looks good. I suppose that maybe it might help you stand out. There's a good and bad side to it. Because it's brilliant getting your music out there, but it can, it's trying not to make sure it gets lost amongst the other millions of great songs or bad songs even.
So that's where we, I suppose, settled on was we needed to get something out there. We'd recorded 2 tracks, really happy with them, and approached Platform Records again, and you and Platform's been brilliant. But again, we were walking into this sort of new age,
changed so much,
of releasing music, really out of
and what are you talking?
comfort zone.
You're talking what, 15 years?
Sort of in 2024, so not far off that since the last single launch. Yeah.
But you think that's not a long time, but there's so much changed in that space of time.
Oh, massive. Yeah, and it's and again we're thinking back as well. You know, when I was involved releasing Calling It Wrong, and then the guys released Venom. At that period of time, you were gigging like 5 nights a week. Guaranteed, but that's because there was gigs to be had. Again, even locally, you probably get it Glasgow, Edinburgh now, maybe not so much, but there was gigs to be had at that time. It just doesn't exist anymore. Everything's done online, and we're trying to get a wrap our heads around this.
It's funny as well, like even just people's their ideas of music. Like when I was at school in the 90s, right, being in a band was like the coolest thing you could do, right? And it's funny, my daughter's 18 now, but a few years ago when she was at high school, I'd said to her, I said, do any of your pals play the guitar or like drums or whatever? And she's like, oh yeah, there's one or two. I was like, do they play in a band, or do they want to start a band? Like, no with me, I mean, and just obviously with them. And she was looking at me like, Dad, that is one of the uncoolest things I've ever heard. And I'm like, that's such a shame. There's nothing cooler than starting a band with your pals or that, but there's a whole younger generation that just doesn't seem to be having.
But it's so easy now as well. Again, we're sounding really old when we talk about this, but you can recreate a pretty decent band sound on your laptop.
I've got a couple of wee things there, and I'm like, that's in like Metallica Black Album here, actually.
And it becomes so easy. So again, there's not that. I'm not saying it's not creative, but there's just not. It's not the same setup anymore.
That's a strange one.
And I like going back to us trying to navigate that. It's been a real learning curve, and we keep having to remind ourselves. When we're putting out social media posts and we're getting very few likes, and one of them, and then the next one you're getting. Also, it's hundreds. You're like, what's going on?
It's not even like you can focus and go right. Facebook, because you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got X, you've got and the list goes on. So you're like, you've got to do it in all of them. You can't just be like, right, let's all focus, and then folk will go, you're on Facebook, that's for old folk. Like, you need to get on this. So Instagram's new date, you need to get on this. It's like you almost need to like hire someone who their thing is just social media.
Yeah, big time. And again, it's really sad then when you think like TikTok and Instagram, like maximum 30 seconds. That's ultimately all you really put out there, and people will only listen to the first couple of seconds.
If you're lucky,
like, you're putting your heart and soul into this stuff. But we're not massive fans of it.
For you personally, and probably for the band though, there is still something just cool about creating something from nothing.
Oh, big time! Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The fact that 6 months ago it might be that you didn't have these 3 songs, and you've now got these 3 songs that are complete and ready to either release or to perform in front of people. And there's something really nice about creating something from nothing. Do you also write your own stuff?
No.
Or are you quite happy to contribute to the idea to make it better?
So contribute absolutely fine. I wouldn't say I'm a songwriter by any means. Come up with little bits, little riffs or.
And see, when you're contributing, will Shawnee give you free rein, or will it simply be like, I like that, do more of that?
Yeah.
I'm not really liking that idea. Can you try something else? But you're mature enough to be like, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of that. Again, everybody's like what you said at the start. He'll have an idea in his head of what the song is and what he wants it to sound like.
Yep.
Again, we're working on one at the moment, and it's been a real work in progress. It's been great to do because every week there's something else that comes along or another idea.
Yep.
It's like we're building, and it's going to be quite different to anything I think we've done in the past. And it's going to have like lots of layers and loads of effects and things like that. But then you take that back to like the single that we're looking at putting out sort of starting next year called Footsteps. The main riff to that was just me messing. Yeah. Like it was just a hammer on.
An accident almost.
Yeah, exactly that. And Shawnee would say, that
What's that?
Do that again.
Yeah.
And then I suppose, but you hear stories of like big bands. That's how these.
So that Sweet Child of Mine was.
Is that right?
Was Slash used to do that to warm up before the gig. It was just a wee exercise, a wee thing that he done simply to warm up his fingers.
Right.
And that's how the song developed.
And
I think it was one of the last songs that they recorded for Appetite for Destruction. They'd already recorded the rest of the album, and it was just, another band practice, another like sound check, better warm up.
Yeah.
What's that you're playing? And it developed from there.
Yeah.
Probably their best known song.
I wouldn't say like the way in which the Shermans have written songs, or Sean's approach to writing songs has never been from an idea of I've got this riff, let's write a song around it or anything like that. But they've always played a massive part in the end structure, and then sort of the memorable elements of songs. There's been that constant throughout. What makes the Shermans work? And what I mean by that is patience.
Is it because the rest of the guys are happy to let Shawnee steer the ship? They trust him coming in, and they're all happy to contribute.
Sure.
And they all get their moment. What I mean, like, see, I was speaking to Neil, the drummer from Travis,
right,
and I asked him the same question. I says, what makes Travis as a band work? And I don't mean it in terms of success, but just the 4 individuals.
Sure.
What makes the band work? And what he'd said was, very early on, Fran Healy was like, I've got the songs, I think they're good songs, and the other 3 guys trusted him.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, the songs weren't complete until everybody in the band contributed to their part, and they make the song better, but they trusted. It's like Fran Healy steering the ship, and the other 3 guys trust the direction he's taken. And is that kind of similar to yourselves?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, and there's lots of jokes that we make, between ourselves and around that. Like Dave, for example, will say, "Well, it doesn't matter. My vote is Sean's got 2 anyway," which is true to a point. He is a massive driving force behind us. He's still shite on the Mouthy. Terrible. I can tell you a couple of funny stories about the mouth organ with him. But there's definitely elements. So there's been very few ideas that he's come with, and we've said that's absolutely torture. But he'll take it on the chin as well when there has been elements of. He's open to listening to the counter argument. But likewise, everybody's got a voice, and I think that's the dynamic. I think that's what. If you look at most successful bands, they have a leader. And when I say leader, I don't mean it's like a dictatorship. Sure, yeah, no. But there is normally one, there's sometimes 2 steering the ship, and the others in the band, everybody's got their voice, they're saying, but everybody knows they're happy with the place, their place in the band, and they're happy to let 1 or 2 different people maybe steer the ship, because they trust their judgment. They know that this is the direction that we're going in. And look, 100%. And again, that's what I get. What we're not struggling with, but when it came to like social media and like make decisions around the releasing Silhouette, for example, we're just like, we're never going to agree on absolutely everything. So if you wholeheartedly don't agree with an approach, say it. If you're not that bothered, say it, and then eventually you get to a point where this is what we're going with, we'll get behind it. None of it's perfect, and we'll be the first to admit that. But I think, again, that's been our approach since day dot. We're not experts in this. We'd always come back to, why are we doing it? We love getting out of the house on a Monday. We've got our own space. We practice for a gig. We need to do that because we want to get back in and record and just keep doing that cycle. Having done both, is there one that you prefer better? Do you prefer recording in the studio or playing live? If you had to pick one, playing live, 100%. I love being in the studio. Like studied as a sound engineer. Thought that was a bit of a career path. Turned out there was no money in it. So I think I went down that similar route as well. Yeah, a lot of people did. So love being in the studio and like messing about with stuff and ideas and getting that finished product and being able to walk away with it. But there is no better feeling than playing live.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and again, not all of us are on the same page with that.
Yeah.
I think, again, using Shawnee as an example, he might be gigged out. You know, he plays a ton of gigs, whether that be covers, and has done over the years. But yeah, it's I absolutely love playing live.
And we're obviously we're at the end of 2024. We're almost in 2025. So what is the plan? I know you've got a gig, because I've got tickets for it.
Oh, nice one.
I can't. Is it February?
February 28th, Foo Bar.
Yep. So I've got tickets. I'll be there cheering you on, or booing you if you're terrible.
Yeah.
And is it more of the same? Continuing writing songs, getting them recorded, maybe a wee gig will pop up here and there?
So we'll wait and see, and I think we wouldn't say no to a gig if it came up or the right opportunity, but look, we keep having these sort of milestones that we'll go for. So we're like super excited about Foo Bar in February. Again, a bit of a change in venue, because we've been in McHugh's the last few years.
Yeah.
And
was there a reason, or was it simply that was what was available?
I suppose the rationale, we're looking for a slightly bigger venue, so we've sold out McHugh's the last couple of times, and we were looking at, well, what do we do?
What does McHugh's hold?
200-ish.
And do you know what the Foo Bar is?
With the options, but we're looking at about 400.
Right, so Dublin.
Yeah, and that's it. And and we're over halfway there. And we have been for quite some time. There's been a lull over the last couple of weeks, but appreciate time.
See, once you get New Year and that out of the way.
Exactly that. So, and we were nervous about approaching the Foo Bar, because we're never going to be able to afford it, and things like that. But the guys have been brilliant. A couple of caveats: Friday night, need to be out by, I think, about 11 o'clock, which is fine.
Yeah.
Again, it's not days gone by when we were partying until
who's your support this time?
We have Jack Butler and the Triple A's.
Right.
And we've played with Jack Butler for years.
I don't think I've seen either, because obviously at McHugh's last time you had Mark Mulady
and Scott,
who've both been on the podcast.
Oh, have they? Right.
So obviously knew the two of them.
Right.
Before anyway, so it was quite cool to actually see them. I've got them on social media.
Right.
I know what they're up to. I know what their sound is. So it was cool seeing them. But I've not seen these other support bands you're talking about. So
Jack Butler are a bit like us. I think they're probably even less so. Like, they'll get together and play the odd gig. They're brilliant, tight as anything. Like, we talk about really good musicians who are really tight.
So it's a nice wee package then.
Yeah, like
yourselves, obviously.
Yeah, and then I can't remember how the Triple A's came about. Sean, I think, knew of them, and we listened to some of their stuff, and again, brilliant. They're doing the gigging circuit at the moment. So really excited to get back out playing next year. So
Chris, we've been very technical with our chit chat.
Right.
Lots of stuff about recording, songwriting, all the fun stuff for musicians. But we're going to end things with some fun questions.
Go for it.
For you, right? So imagine you've got a time machine. You can go anywhere in the world.
Right.
Big gig, small gig. What's the one gig that you wish you could have attended?
The Smiths at the Stirling Uni.
Yeah, I love that question, because it doesn't. You get a different answer.
It was way back. In fact, my dad went and seen Queen at Stirling. I'm not a Queen fan, but he recalls going to see Queen at Stirling Uni as well.
Wow, that would have been what a thing to be able to say.
Like from way back. But I think seeing someone like the Smiths, early doors, small venue, local, would have been brilliant to see.
I know someone that went to the Isle of Wight festival.
Right.
The original one, so it had like Hendrix and the Doors and everything like that, and I'm like, wow, imagine being able to. And it's only in your memories, because you obviously didn't have a phone to record it, and there's something quite cool. I mean, at least now you've got your phone, you could kind of take a picture or whatever, but it's quite cool. So, next question then. As you know, millions of amazing songs have been written across the years, different artists. What's the one song you wish you could have been in the studio to witness the band actually record it?
That's tough. For sheer fact that I love the song, love the band, and I think it would have been great fun. All or Nothing with the Small Faces.
Cool. what's your favourite album cover? Have you got one that comes to mind when I say that?
Again, there's a bit of nostalgia on this one. I remember being a family holiday and my dad listening to Ghost of Tom Joad by Bruce Springsteen,
right,
on repeat, and it's like every song tells a story. And the album cover on that is pretty cool, but that's always a standout actually when I think album covers.
Right. You might end up getting in trouble by your band here. Right. So imagine you've got a dead body in the boot of your car.
Okay.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. You need to dispose of this body, no questions asked.
All right.
Which band member are you phoning to help you?
Dave.
And why?
For only reasons only he'll know.
There you go.
He's good at digging holes and getting himself out of them.
And we'll not say it anymore on that. And then the last one, Mount Rushmore. Who is the 4 musicians or bands, just purely for yourself,
right,
that the 4 favourite?
And I can't say the rest of the band here. So like Steve Craddock, massive Steve Craddock fan.
Yep.
Love everything he does, has done, and everything he's been involved in. Probably Paul Weller as well, so big Paul Weller fan.
Yep.
You're starting to see a theme here. Again, Bowie, from the fact that the first song, learnt on the guitar. Not a huge avid Bowie fan, but I do love that Ziggy Stardust album. And then the last one, who would be the last one? I don't know, it's so hard.
It's one of those questions as well. It'll change tomorrow.
Oh, big time, yeah.
You've got a 4th one to pick.
I think, again, simply because I've been listening to a lot of them, maybe Brian Ferry.
There you go. Right, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You, it's been great. Appreciate it.
Cool meeting you. Obviously, we'll meet up again in February next year. For anybody wanting to find out stuff about the Shermans, they're on all the normal social media. They can go on there, whether it be new music, whether it be gigs, whether it be getting tickets for February or any future gigs. So anybody watching, they can check it out. And obviously, I wish yourself and the Shermans all the luck in the future. And as I said, we'll catch up in February. And depending if you're good or bad, I'll either cheer or boo.
And put a review.
Exactly.